Dyami Brown just be out there jump running around. Man had 80 more yards on the season than me.
Yo, Dyami's ass, bro. Right now, yo, we're gonna call Dyami ass right now.
No need for a long-winded intro today. I got my brother, Timeline Pot Stir, Ball Knower, and group chat brethren, my boy Jalen Morgan of the Bleeding B&G podcast. How are we doing on this Tuesday evening, sir?
What's up, man? I'm excited. Like I always say, football is back. So the fall is our time to shine, and I'm excited to talk some Commanders football, and most specifically excited to talk about my boy Dyami Brown out there running around.
Hell yeah, I know. I remember when you said it for the first time on the show. I definitely got to run the clip, but this is a player we were very excited about coming out of school back in 2021. We championed him after a historic Richmond training camp, Friday night football intra-squad scrimmage. He flashed in the preseason, and then he's proceeded in 3 seasons in 47 games to only give us about 29 catches, 470 yards, and 3 touchdowns. What are your current thoughts on Dyami? Because it's looking like right now that may be our starter opposite Terry once we get to week 1.
I mean, you touched on it. I've been on an emotional roller coaster with Dyami Brown because, to be quite honest with you, when we drafted him in 2012, you can remember that was the first draft we were together. I pointed out, like, I didn't love the fact that he was supposed to be the deep threat and he ran a 4.5 with the COVID 40 time. So I'm like, is this guy really like a 4.5, 4.6 guy? But like you said, then we saw that Richmond training camp. And I know you remember the same rep that I remember when he had Kendall Fuller doing the Booker T spin-a-roni at the line of scrimmage. I know exactly, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But I was like, and he opened up my eyes. He made me a believer after that because I was a little skeptical about him coming out because I remember like Chris Sims ranking him as the #1 receiver in that class with like Jamar Chase. I don't know where that ever came from.
Chris Sims loves him still.
Yeah, but that Richmond training camp, I was like, all right, we got ourselves a dude. We got ourselves a legitimate, compliment to Terry McLaurin, and then these whatever 40-odd games happen where he's been giving out the amount of production that I have, to be honest. And like you said, we coined the frame Dyami Brown out running around. It's really what he did in his first 3 seasons. I think most catches that he's had in the season is like 12. I think we're like 12, 5, and 12. And that's not the type of production that you're looking for a guy that you drafted with a 3rd round pick. But I do think that, he's kind of reclaiming some of that Richmond glory with a guy like Jaden Daniels. And I'm not necessarily too surprised because the talent is there because we saw it with our 2 eyes in Richmond. And a guy like Jaden Daniels is the type of quarterback that's going to elevate those guys' talents. And I don't think that he's had that type of quarterback play since he's been in Washington. Not even his best friend, old buddy, old pal, Sam Howell, who he cried when he drafted him for. He's not the type of guy to elevate that talent. So I'm not necessarily surprised to hear that, Dyami's production has been boosted with a guy like Jaden Daniels.
I remember 2021. Like you said, them COVID 40s, you get a 4.2, you get a 4.2, you get a 4.3. They might as well gave someone a 4.1 during them COVID pro days. But coming into it, we were excited. We were ready for him to be a starting contributor as a rookie here in 2021. Training camp back in Richmond, the last time training camp really felt like training camp and when season ticket holders actually felt a VIP experience, by the way. I remember watching Dyami that summer. I remember him going to work on Kendall Fuller and them at the Friday night practice at FedEx Field when we had Friday night football. He flashed versus the Bengals in the he flashes every preseason. He goes crazy in the summer and becomes Casper the Friendly Ghost when the regular season comes. You said he'd be out there running around. I said he was ass. I thought he was going to be fighting for a roster spot. He's currently entrenched as the starting wide receiver with Olamide Zaccheaus in the slot and Terry on the other side as our old reliable linchpin #1 over here. So he's an enigma. Like, he's an enigma at this point. And we got Cliff Kingsbury coming in here trying to bring out some of that old Dyami magic. We're talking about a receiver at UNC, back-to-back 1,000-yard season. The first player since 2000 to have back-to-back 20 yards per catch seasons in the FBS. This was supposed to be a deep ball demon coming into the league. When you get a chance to play with the quarterback who got you drafted in the NFL, that's usually the wake-up call for most guys in this league. Based on what you've seen on tape in Dyami's first 3 years, what do you think his shortcomings, like why hasn't he produced what we thought he was going to be?
I don't want to make myself sound like a receiver regulator or a guy that knows it all, but he just misses some like nuances of the game, or he has missed some nuances of the game. Like, it's ironic to see him out there, putting out those videos on YouTube working with a guy like Akeem Nicks, who had a hell of a career. But it just seems like Dyami, like, his footwork wasn't always the par. He lacked a lot of separation at the top of the route. And it seemed like the only thing that he could do at one point was the deep ball. And, I've always said, how reliable are we going to have how are we going to depend on a deep threat that runs a 4.5, right? So, I mean, that can be only but so reliable. And it's not like he's 6'4" and is able to just high point the ball and moss everybody. But I will say that when he has flashed and has been with that deep ball, so he might be more of a long strider. He might be better in a 100 than a 40, or things of that nature. But, Jaden Daniels being the best deep ball thrower in the draft, I think that their skill sets just perfectly aligned. And I don't think that we've had a good necessarily deep ball thrower. I know that Sam Howell did throw the ball far, but it wasn't always the most accurate. Same with Carson Wentz. He could throw it over the barnyard, but it might hit you on the sidelines like it damn near hit us in Ashburn at that mini camp. So, I mean, I hate to put it on Jaden Daniels and put the pressure on it, but I think that their skill sets is perfectly aligned.
And that assessment you just gave, it aligns with the thinking of Dyami coming into this league, because I'm looking at a Bleacher Report draft profile on Dyami right now. Here are the negatives. Ran a limited route tree because he was in an RPO heavy offense. Will need to keep working to expand his repertoire. Won't make a ton of guys miss with the ball in his hands. Will need to continue to add play strength. Has a good mindset, but will need a physical profile to match. And he had drops on shorter throws with ball control coming at his body. That is very accurate to what we've seen with Dyami so far.
I mean, and some guys, typically outshine their draft profiles, but that one just seems to fit him to a T. And that's the guy that we've seen in the first 3 years. What you think about that?
Hell yeah. Oh, it's definitely what we see. Like, he has a problem with concentration drops. Like, I remember last year, you remember the infamous blackout game versus Chicago. We're down 17-0. Dyami is wide the hell open on a post pattern, like a skinny post across the middle of the field. Sam put it a little bit outside his hands, but he got both hands on the ball. An NFL starting receiver has to make that pass. We've seen too many concentration drops with Dyami since his time here. And it appears that, kind of like Jahan Dotson, if a corner gets their hands on him at the line of scrimmage, it's almost like the route is over with before it even gets beginning.
It did appear like that in the first couple of weeks, but that's one thing that I actually saw the first couple of years in his career. But that's one thing that I actually saw in his preseason game against Miami. Those routes that he won on, or those 3 catches outside of the screen, he was uber physical. I was like, all right, is he having an awakening? Is he really having this breakout? And that was really like the snapshot moment that told me, like, all right, this isn't all flash and all hype. Like, there might be some substance in this type of off-season breakout that he's having.
Hell yeah. And you can tell over the last couple years, there's definitely been a priority on getting an NFL receiver body. He got swole. I remember when we saw him at camp back in 2022, we were like, that's Dyami.
Yeah,
this boy came out, like he been in the gym, and it still didn't result to production, but we know how Washington is. We're a revolving door at quarterback. 8 quarterbacks starting in the last 8 seasons. Terry McLaurin's played with 11 quarterbacks here. We've been through 2 offensive coordinators with Eric Bieniemy and Scott Turner. Failures all across the board. How much of Dyami's shortcomings are the situation in Washington versus his lack of production, or can you split that shit right down the middle?
I don't really want to necessarily put a percentage on it because I don't know what number to put on it. but I will say majority. So I know over 50. And the thing is, it's like different things every year. Now, Dyami is a culprit in his own doing, but like last year, them damn X Madden ass routes that Eric Bieniemy was drawing up, nobody was going to thrive in that. Terry McLaurin didn't thrive in that system. So why the fuck would we think? Why would we think Dyami Brown would be doing that? And then other than that, you know, he had Carson Wentz as his quarterback and Taylor Heineke, who couldn't hit the deep ball to save his fucking life, right? And so I mean, I think that, you know, a lot of it has to do with situation, but as we mentioned before, with a lot of like the concentration drops, not creating separation, that's Dyami's doing on his own. But he hasn't had the best situation here, and like this is his last leg. Because if you can't do it with a guy like Jaden Daniels, when the things that we've seen in this preseason and the things that we know that he's going to be coming in translating from LSU to the NFL game, I don't think that you're going to do it with anybody in today's type of NFL.
And that's a fact. You get a baller, number 2 overall pick, Heisman Trophy winner who knows where he's going with the ball. Like the last quarterback, I'm not trying to pile on old Sam. I love Sam. I want him to thrive and take Gino's job in Seattle. Sam had the processing clock of a fucking sloth. He was a very slow processor. This guy knows, he's very intentional in his movement. Jaden knows what the defense is in and where he wants to go with the ball before the ball snap. So if Dyami's truly starting in this air raid style college RPO heavy offense that Dyami played in college, there is no more excuses for him not to thrive and produce like a starting receiver in this league. Our last number 2 option, Curtis Samuel, now a Buffalo Bill. Hope he thrives down there with Josh Allen. Over his last 3 years, 132 receptions, 1,300 yards, 8 touchdowns. That's the type of production at least we can try to expect. I know Curtis was more of a Swiss Army knife. We moved him around. What is a decent and fair amount of production we can expect if Dyami really is the starter this year?
Hey, that's your second Jahan Dotson dig. I didn't call it, and I ain't mad at it. I ain't mad at it. You know, I'm right with you, but I just want to let you know that I'm over here catching it. I'm catching all the shade that you're giving out.
And we're going to talk about him next, too. That's coming up real soon.
But realistically, and I was just thinking about this the other day, and it's crazy that you asked this question. I didn't know what number to put on a breakout season for Dyami Brown for a guy that hasn't had more than 200 yards in a season. So to be completely honest, and I'm going to do it because you asked the question, around 650 yards and about 40 catches would be a breakout season for Dyami Brown.
Out of here. Swear to God, I got 650 yards written down right now.
Swear, bro. Like, that's why you brought me on this show. It's no other chemistry, no other telepathy than a Rio and Bleeding B&D episode, dog.
650 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 44 catches.
See, he's got the 40 catches just like me, too. I might give him a bigger touchdown number because we know that Cliff Kingsbury type offense does take deep shots, and I think that's where he's going to be the most successful in. Because I think once we get in the red zone, I think we're running the hell out the ball, to be 100% honest with you. If he's going to have those touchdowns, it's going to be as a result of the deep ball, and I think that he could get there. But, yeah, it seems like we got similar stat lines, bro.
Oh, yeah, I got it right here. 44 catches, 650 yards, 4 touchdowns for Dyami Brown. That's a good season for Dyami. Like, I know there are going to be fans like, that's all y'all giving him. Be mindful. Jalen just said he hasn't went over 200 yards in a season yet. This nigga has not went for 200 yards in a season yet. These are his yard totals in his first 3 seasons. 165, 143, 168. That is 476 yards, 7 games started and 47 games played. So these are really good predictions for if Dyami starts to really become a thing in year 4. This is a do or die season for his NFL career. And Jalen just mentioned a guy, so it's time to address the elephant in the room. The guy Dyami is competing for that number 2 spot with is Jahan Dotson going into year 3, who we thought had the number 2 job wrapped up. Is this more of Jahan's shortcomings, or did Dyami go out and win the job in the spring and the summertime?
Is he really competing with Jahan Dotson at this point? Is it really a competition? Man, to be 100% honest with you, man, it's got a lot to do with a lot of things. But I would chalk it up mostly to Jahan Dotson's shortcomings. Because I mentioned it on my last episode. Leave it up to Washington fans to stand the receiver that they drafted in the first round to stand over somebody that has 1,000 yards over the course of like 2 career seasons, right? Like he's reached stand category, and I don't understand it. He's reached stand status, and to be 100% honest with you, Jahan Dotson just isn't the type of guy that fits these Cliff Kingsbury scheme. And that's where I really think that, Dyami's breakthrough he's a Cliff Kingsbury type of receiver. Now, he's not the biggest, but he's somebody that you are going to line up on out the boundary. Now, Cliff Kingsbury doesn't do a lot of motion, so he doesn't need to make you miss like the draft report said and things of that nature. He's going to line you up on the boundary. He's going to tell you to beat his guy, and he's going to tell you to block. And those are a couple of things that Jahan Dotson has struggled to do since 2022. And I think that, the Cliff Kingsbury, you either want big boundary receivers or you want flyers that run 4.2 or 4.3. Jahan Dotson is neither one of those. Now, Dyami Brown, he doesn't run a 4.2 or 4.3, but he does have the capability of playing big when asked to. And when you don't have a lot of receiver room in the size, you rely on a guy like Dyami's size. So I think a lot of it has to do with a lot of things, but mostly Jahan Dotson's shortcomings. Because if you think that he's been worth that 16th pick, you fooling yourself.
Hell yeah. And that stand hive culture of fans, like I'm telling you, the dudes who run around with profile pictures of players, that type of faction thing, they get very toxic. And it's to the point where we forget that these are grown men millionaires who lace their shoes up like everybody else. And if you look around league-wide, there are guys on every roster that still produce in spite of ineptitude from their bosses. Terry was fighting for his life last year in Eric Bieniemy's system and still goes over 1,000 yards because that's what a number one wide receiver does. There was a point in time where I thought Jahan was going to challenge Terry for that number one spot on the roster. Wrongo, big wrongo. I will eat my crow on that one. Now Jahan is fighting to get on the field within the first 3 receivers to Dyami and guys like Olamide Zaccheaus. I'm looking at Kyler's rookie season. I'm looking at the top receivers on this team. I see Larry Fitzgerald, Christian Kirk, running back David Johnson, Damiere Byrd, Pharaoh Cooper, and at the bottom of this list, I see Andy Isabella, the rookie he drafted because he drafted like 3 receivers that year. What is Jahan's role going to be in this wide receiver room?
I mean, I guess the closest guy that you just named that you can comp him to is like Christian Kirk, but we'll be fooling. Like Christian Kirk has had near 1,000 yard seasons. I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that out of Jahan Dotson. But I guess that's the closest guy that you can give an athletic comp to because he's not big on the boundary and run a 4.3, but he might be a little bit more explosive than Jahan. So if he can take on that Christian Kirk role of, taking the top off of defenses so that, guys like Terry can work over the middle where he's a master at. And I really feel like him and Dyami, now that I'm talking through it, I feel like they might be fighting for the same role as that deep threat, taking the cover off the defense type guy, because we don't really have another guy like that. You don't want Terry to be that because he's so good in the intermediate routes. He can do it, but you don't want him to be that designated guy on the offense. And OZ, while I love him and he's had a good camp, or Luke McCaffrey, they're not deep threat guys. So, I mean, his best bet is looking to be that take the top off the defense. I know Chris Cooley has comped him to Deshaun Jackson before. I don't know where the hell that came from, but hopefully he can be a poor man Deshaun Jackson, where he's just taking the top off of the defense for Terry McLaurin and hopefully Austin Eckler and Zach Ertz to eat over the middle.
And even if Dyami turns out to be a one-trick pony deep threat, ain't nothing wrong with being a one-trick pony if you're a master of the craft of your one trick. There's a lot of one-trick ponies in professional sports. If you are a true master of that one trick, nobody's worried about it. But I see JP Finley throw this out on the timeline this week, and I'm not sure who specifically he was adding it to, but since we're talking about Dyami and we're talking about a wide receiver, we're going to talk about it here. He said, look at the trajectory of a guy like Nico Collins in Houston. His first 2 years in his career coming out of Michigan, 30 catches, 37 catches, 480 yards, 440 yards, 3 touchdowns through his first 2 seasons. They get CJ Stroud in there, a real quarterback, a good offensive coordinator in Bobby Slowett. He explodes for 80 catches, 1,300 yards, 8 touchdowns, and he gets a contract out of it. So Is Dyami's trajectory, is it comparable, or what are we even talking about here?
JP actually talked about it on the radio today. He was alluding to Dyami Brown, and I see a lot of similar circumstances. The only reason why I'm hesitant to say that it's on a Nico Collins type of trajectory is because he had 1,300 yards last season, right? That's a huge type of jump to take. Like he has his own X factor on Madden right now, and this is a guy that didn't have a 500-yard season before that. So, like he's a solidified like baller on a national status right now. And I think that CJ did a little more damage than I'm projecting Jaden to do. I think that they're going to have similar success as a rookie quarterback, but I think some of Jaden's success is going to come on the ground. And let alone, just to be quite frank, Nico Collins is an athletic specimen. He's like 6'4" and runs a 4.4, right? So like Dyami doesn't have that type of juice as far as just height, weight, speed. He does have a little bit of it, but just I think the combination of what CJ Stroud did just throwing through the air last season, right? Like he had almost 4,200 passing yards. Like I don't think Jaden's going to reach those type of numbers throwing the ball, and I think a lot of our damage is going to come running. So I don't think he's going to get that yard production. But like you said before, 650 yards. I'm pleased. I'm pleased. I might be looking to give Dyami Brown a second contract at that point.
Absolutely. And I just like the parallels being drawn here. Houston situation, knew everything, just like ours. Rookie quarterback, second overall pick, just like us. And he's from the Inlet Empire in California, San Bernardino, just like CJ Stroud. Maybe Dyami Brown can have a percentage of what Nico Collins became, but 1,300 yards is a lot to project on anyone. If anybody's touching 1,300 on this roster, it is Terry McLaurin, and I know he can't wait to finally play with a competent quarterback over a 17-week period. But to close this one out, because we don't want to go too long today, we both got things to do. What is your confidence level, 1 through 10, in Washington's wide receiver room? Does something else need to be added when cuts are made next week? Or in year one, are you content with a wide receiver room of Terry, Jahan, Dyami, OZ, Crowder, Luke McCaffrey, ...
I'm going to give you two answers. On a scale from 1 to 10, as far as the wide receiver room, I'm at about a 6. But as far as maybe a 5 to 6, but as far as just a pass catching committee as a whole, I'm at about a 7 or an 8 because I really think that he's going to rejuvenate Jaden Daniels that I'm talking about. I think he's going to rejuvenate a guy like Zach Ertz because we've seen it all training camp. That's been one consistent. That's probably the first person that he built that rapport. And I think that Austin Ekeler is going to shock a lot of people. A lot of people are writing off Austin Ekeler, and we know the type of damage that he does in the pass game. I think he's only about 5 receptions short from being the all-time leader as a running back in, touchdown receptions. So I think that he might get that this year. So I think that he's going to be lethal as a pass catcher as well. And Ben Sinnott, I didn't think that he was going to provide much in the passing game, but he's looked like a stud. He's looked like a stud over the course of the last 2 weeks. I didn't know he could work downfield like that. So I got more faith in the pass catching committee as a whole than the wide receiver room. But when you got a guy like Jaden Daniels, you can lift a wide receiver room that's a 5 to a 6 to up to a 7 to an 8, like Tom Brady did in his early years with the Pats. Not putting too much pressure on him.
And for the majority of his career, because outside with playing with Randy for a couple years, he was playing with a bunch of buddies for the majority of his career. It's why they were able to keep that championship team together there. They didn't have a bunch of players that were playing big contracts too. So I like how you put it when you put pass catchers instead of just receiver room, because B-Rob and Ekeler are going to get passes thrown to him. We have a 3-headed, capable tight end room with Ertz, Sennett, and John Bates, who is the coaches love here in DC. Logan Paulson loves the guy, and fans are starting to come around about how balanced of a tight end he is here. I think I'm going to start going into the season as a 7. I don't want to be too high or too low, but 7 seems fine for me because I'm going to let these guys go out and prove it. I have not seen this new offense yet, but I think it's going to be effective because I believe in the play caller quarterback relationship that's going to exist between Cliff Kingsbury and Jaden Daniels. Oh, one last bonus question on the way out. Is Dyami the best hooper on the team, or you think Jaden Daniels giving him some run one-on-one?
Dyami might be. You know, we seen that video when they asked about half the team said Dyami. I tweeted, I was like, damn, at least Dyami can find something that he's good at. Like I said, I've had an emotional roller coaster. Do you remember?
We both have.
Do you remember when I went to a Wizards game? It was like a Monday after Dyami had a 0-yard performance, and I saw him at a Wizards game, and I was disgusted that he was there. I was like, what the? We don't have the same production, bro. Like, what are you doing at this Wizards game? You need to be going getting the jugs or something. So I don't want him to seem like this Dyami hype beast, but I am going to give credit where it's due. So it might be Dyami or it might be Bobby Wagner be talking like he got a little something in his bag.
Yeah. Bobby Wagner be talking like he can hoop.
I feel like he a little too swole to shoot a jumper though.
He looks like he plays basketball like a football player, because you know how that be an open gym when the football teams show up and everybody just frolicking through the line like Incredible Hulk.
He be talking so confident, like you ain't got no choice but to think he nice.
Oh yeah, but nah, Bobby Wagner might be nice though, bro. He keeps a clean lineup. I trust niggas that got a clean lineup on the basketball court. But I remember Dyami when he was going through his YouTube influencer era. I did remember seeing him hoop on that channel, so I do believe he gets busy on the basketball court. We both have a complicated relationship with this player because we've said everything in the book. He's not going to make the roster. He's ass. He's this. He's that. He'd be out there running around. He got 80 more yards than me, and I'm at home. Everything was said. We put it out there. We don't try to be those guys that act like we never said anything negative about a guy. We're going to always keep it real. We're going to always keep it a buck. And we want the best for these players. We don't want any of these players on our team to fail. So that's that. We're going to close the book on the Dyami Brown wide receiver 2 situation here. Let the folks know where they can find you and how to subscribe to your channel on your way out, Jalen.
As always, man, at BleedingBNG, you see it right there. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Twitter. Like you said, like Rio said at the beginning of the episode, notorious pot stir, notorious timeline stir. And I'm over there getting out a couple of hot takes before it's reaching a lot of like the big news media outlets. So if you want to be in front and you want to sound like a smart football fan, go ahead and follow BleedingBNG. You can look up at Jalen Morgan or at BleedingBNG on YouTube. Our channel will pop up, and appreciate the support.
Absolutely. And if you're a subscriber of my channel, this is my brother right here. This is my friend in real life. This is more than some content and football related thing. This is my guy. We're almost at 12,000 subscribers on the channel. Click subscribe on Jalen's channel, my guy. Click subscribe on Jalen's channel. We will collab a lot more during the season, and hopefully we're able to get a group chat pod on the way because we haven't done one of those in a while. Until next time, y'all know what it is. Hell to the Washington Commanders. Commander Rio, out.
Michael Vick here at BetUS.com. Get it all. Huge bonuses, great odds, a race book, live in-game betting, and a casino. BetUS, my online sports book and casino.